Mr. Sanford, in order for me to know what I have to know so I can get down to business, you will have to open.
Well, until I know what I have to know, the business stays closed.
Hollywood has a secret it doesn't want you to know. For decades, they've been taking British shows, changing the accents, and calling them original. We found 20 of them, and some of the biggest hits in U.S. history are on the list. The truth about one beloved paper company will shock you, but first, we need to talk about a grumpy dad from Queens who changed television forever. 1. All in the Family.
Are you waiting for a special invitation? I said breakfast is on the table.
I heard you. So did every moose up in Canada.
Everyone knows Archie Bunker. He was the loud, grumpy, and set-in-his-ways dad from Queens, New York, who made All in the Family one of the most important shows in American history. From his worn-out armchair, Archie would argue with his sweet wife Edith, his daughter Gloria, and especially his liberal son-in-law, who he famously called Meathead. The show was a massive hit in the 1970s because it wasn't afraid to talk about real-world issues in a way no sitcom had ever dared to before. It was considered a truly American classic. But here's the secret that will blow your mind. Archie Bunker was not an American creation. Truth be told, the entire show was a remake of a British sitcom called Till Death Us Do Part. The original show featured a character named Alf Garnett, who was just as loud and prejudiced as Archie. He argued with his family about everything, and he was a working-class guy who felt like the world was changing too fast around him. The creator of All in the Family, Norman Lear, saw the show and knew the idea would work in America. He bought the rights and created a show that was almost a mirror image of the British original, at least at first. The American version became a cultural giant, winning tons of awards and starting conversations in living rooms all across the country. It was so successful that it launched multiple spin-off shows and made Archie Bunker a household name. Most Americans thought it was a one-of-a-kind creation, never knowing that the idea came from an equally grumpy dad across the ocean. Archie Bunker may have been the king of 70s sitcoms, but another TV dad from that era, one who lived in a junkyard, also had a secret British past. 2. Sanford and Son.
How about a hot cup of coffee?
Great, I'll get it.
No. You don't have to go get nothing. I'll get anything you want. Grady, get Lamont a cup of coffee.
I'm coming, Elizabeth. That was the famous line Fred Sanford would cry out whenever he was having a fake heart attack to get his way. Sanford and Son was another huge hit from the 1970s. It was about Fred, a cranky old junk dealer in Los Angeles, and his long-suffering son, Lamont. The two were always getting into hilarious schemes, usually because Fred was trying to get rich quick or avoid doing any real work. The show was groundbreaking for its time, featuring a mostly black cast and turning the comedian Red Fox into a superstar. Believe it or not, Fred and Lamont's junkyard adventures were not an original American idea. The show was a direct remake of a popular British sitcom called Steptoe and Son. The UK version was about Albert Steptoe and his son Harold, who were also junk dealers, or rag and bone men as they called them in London. Just like the American version, the show's humor came from the arguments between the father and son. The father was old and stuck in his ways, while the son dreamed of a better life but felt trapped in the family business. The American producers took this simple idea and gave it a whole new flavor. By setting it in a black community in LA and casting the hilarious Red Fox, they created something that felt completely fresh and new to American audiences. The show became a ratings powerhouse and is still loved today for its sharp comedy and unforgettable characters. It's another case of a brilliant British idea getting an American makeover and becoming a legend. Taking a show about two guys and remaking it is one thing. But what about a show that took a British comedy about one man and two women living together and turned it into one of the most famous and controversial sitcoms of all time? 3. Three's Company.
Hello? Janet, what took you so long to answer the phone? I was getting Cindy out of her wedding gown. Isn't her husband supposed to do that?
Come and knock on our door. For millions of fans in the late 70s and early 80s, that theme song meant it was time for Three's Company. The show was about Jack Tripper, a clumsy but good-hearted guy who moves in with two single women, Janet and Chrissy. To get their grumpy landlord, Mr. Roper, to approve of the living arrangement, Jack has to pretend that he is not interested in girls. This misunderstanding led to all kinds of wacky situations and hilarious over-the-top comedy. It was silly, it was full of innuendo, and it was a gigantic hit. But here's the kicker. The entire idea for the show was lifted from a British sitcom called Man About the House. The original show had the exact same plot. A guy named Robin moves in with two women, Chrissy and Joe. To get the landlords, the Ropers, yes, they had the same name, to agree, Robin also has to pretend he's not interested in his female roommates. The British show was a little more grounded and less cartoonish than the American version, but the core ideas were identical. The American creators took the British formula and cranked it up to 11. They made the physical comedy bigger, the misunderstandings crazier, and the characters more iconic. John Ritter became a huge star for his portrayal of Jack Tripper. The show was so popular that it even created 2 spin-offs, just like the British original did. It's a perfect example of Hollywood finding a successful recipe from overseas and adding its own American spices to make a dish that audiences would eat up for years. From the wacky 70s to the boring 2000s, our next show is perhaps the most famous British remake of all. It took a show about a miserable paper company and turned it into a comedy giant. 4. The Office.
Call my baby sister an ass and told her to eat dog food?
We thought that she was you.
Why would you think a lady is me?
Are you serious?
When you think of the greatest sitcoms of the 2000s, The Office is always at the top of the list. The show, presented like a real documentary, followed the everyday lives of the employees at the Dunder Mifflin Paper Company in Scranton, Pennsylvania. You had the world's most clueless boss, Michael Scott, the sweet romance between Jim and Pam, and the bizarre beet farming antics of Dwight Schrute. The show was a cultural phenomenon that was both hilarious and full of heart. But that whole idea, the documentary style, the awkward boss, and the workplace romance all came from the United Kingdom. The original version of The Office was created by 2 guys named Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant. The British show was set in a paper company in a gloomy English town called Slough. The boss, David Brent, was even more cringe-worthy than Michael Scott, and the show's humor was much darker and more uncomfortable. It was a huge critical success in the UK, but was not a massive mainstream hit. When American producers decided to remake it, many people thought they were crazy. The first season of the US version was almost a direct copy of the British one, and a lot of viewers didn't like it. But then, in the second season, the writers started to make the characters their own. They made Michael Scott a little more lovable, they leaned into the quirky side characters, and they made the show more optimistic. The result was a show that broke away from its British roots to become a beloved masterpiece in its own right, and one of the most successful remakes ever. The Office showed that you can remake a show and make it even more successful. But our next show took a gritty British drama about a chaotic family and turned it into an American series that was even wilder than the original. 5. Shameless.
Debbie.
How you doing, Debbie?
Nice watch.
Oh, thanks. Panerai.
What'd that set you back about? 6 bills?
For 11 seasons, the American version of Shameless gave us a look into the lives of the Gallagher family. Living on the south side of Chicago, the family was led by their completely unreliable father, Frank, and held together by the oldest daughter, Fiona. The 6 Gallagher kids were always getting into some kind of trouble, trying to survive and find moments of joy in their chaotic world. The show was a dramedy, meaning it could make you laugh 1 minute and make you feel deep emotions the next. It was a critical hit, and gained a huge, loyal fan base. This wild American family actually got its start in Manchester, England. The original British version of Shameless was also about the Gallagher family, a dad named Frank, and his pack of resourceful kids. The British show was created by a writer named Paul Abbott and was based on his own experiences growing up in a big, disorderly family. The UK version was known for being even grittier, messier, and more outrageous than its American counterpart. It was a massive success in Britain and ran for years. When Showtime decided to bring the show to America, they knew they had to get the casting right. They hired the famous actor William H. Macy to play Frank, and a talented young cast to play the kids. While the first season followed the British version pretty closely, the American show soon found its own path. It explored its characters in different ways and created its own unique storylines, eventually running for even more seasons than the original. It proved that a great story about family, no matter how messy, can work anywhere in the world. From a messy family to a messy government, our next show took a biting British political satire and transformed it into an American comedy that won almost every award imaginable. 6. Veep?
You're not even a man, you're like an early draft of a man where they just sketched out a giant, mangled skeleton, but they didn't have time to add details like pigment or self-respect.
Selina Meyer, the character played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus on the show Veep, is one of the most memorable characters in modern comedy. The show followed her chaotic journey as the Vice President of the United States. Selina and her team of stressed-out, fast-talking aides were constantly trying to put out political fires, climb the ladder of power, and deal with one hilarious disaster after another. The show was famous for its incredibly clever and creative insults and its cynical look at the world of politics. It was a smash hit for HBO. Here's the secret connection. The creator of Veep was a Scottish writer named Armando Iannucci. Before he came to America, he created a very similar show in the UK called The Thick of It. That show was also a political satire, but instead of the Vice President's office, it was set in a boring British government department. The star of the show was a terrifying and foul-mouthed communications director named Malcolm Tucker, who was a master of insults. The show had the same chaotic energy and documentary-style feel as Veep. Instead of doing a direct remake, Iannucci decided to take the same idea and style and apply it to American politics. He created a whole new set of characters but kept the same comedic spirit. In a way, Veep isn't a remake as much as it is a sibling to The Thick of It. It took the unique political humor that made the British show a cult classic and used it to create an American show that became an absolute juggernaut, proving that clueless politicians are funny in any country. While Veep was a huge success, our next HBO remake was a much quieter show that took a gentle British comedy about hospital nurses and gave it a brilliant but little-seen American version. 7. Getting On.
That's a good one. That's got to be something.
Did you get that? She's Cambodian.
Cambodian. I knew it was something like that.
Not many people saw the American show Getting On, but those who did absolutely loved it. The series was set in the geriatric ward of a struggling hospital in California. It followed a group of nurses and doctors as they tried to care for their elderly patients while dealing with the absurd rules and regulations of the hospital system. The show starred Laurie Metcalf and Niecy Nash, and it was praised by critics for its dark humor and its surprisingly touching moments. It was a hidden gem that was both funny and incredibly real. This quiet, realistic comedy got its start as a British series, also called Getting On. The original show was set in a geriatric ward of a British National Health Service hospital. It was created by and starred a group of 3 talented actresses, including Jo Brand, who is a very famous comedian in the UK. The British version had the same low-key, realistic style and found humor in the small, everyday frustrations of working in a hospital. It was a critical darling in the UK, celebrated for its smart writing and amazing performances. The American producers at HBO saw the brilliance of the original and decided to create their own version. They stayed very true to the spirit of the UK show. They kept the realistic tone, the focus on female characters, and the dark, understated comedy. Even though it never became a huge mainstream hit like other HBO shows, The American Getting On was a masterclass in how to do a remake right. It respected the original while creating something uniquely its own. Some remakes try to copy the script, but our next show took a British improv comedy and brought the whole format, and even its host, to America for a show where everything's made up and the points don't matter. 8. Whose line is it, anyway?
Unlikely lines from country and western songs.
My Maserati needs a tune-up.
For years, Whose Line Is It Anyway? Was the go-to show for improv comedy on American television. Hosted by the charming Drew Carey, the show featured 4 brilliant comedians who would play games and create scenes right on the spot based on suggestions from the audience. Performers like Wayne Brady, Colin Mockery, and Ryan Stiles became famous for their incredible quick-witted talent. The show was pure fun, a hilarious and unpredictable half-hour of comedy that felt like a party everyone was invited to. What most American fans didn't know was that their favorite improv show was actually an import. The original Whose Line Is It Anyway started as a radio show in Great Britain before moving to television. The UK TV version was hosted by a man named Clive Anderson and featured a rotating cast of British and American comedians, including Ryan Stiles and Colin Mockery from the American show. The format was exactly the same, with the same games and the same silly vibe. The show was so successful that American producers decided to bring it straight to the US. They changed very little. They brought over some of the best performers from the UK version, added Drew Carey as the host to appeal to American audiences, and let the magic happen. It was less of a remake and more of a franchise expansion. It worked perfectly, and the American version became even more popular than the original, running for many years and becoming a beloved classic of improvisational comedy. Whose Line was a case where being a copycat worked perfectly. But our next show tried to copy a British hit about 2 childish guys, and the American version ended up being a mess that nobody liked. 9. Men Behaving Badly.
Old friend, flannel shirt, sensible shoes. Can you ask for a bigger clue?
Hi, I'm Ellen.
In the mid-90s, NBC launched a sitcom called Men Behaving Badly, starring Rob Schneider, Ron Eldard, and Justine Bateman. The show was about 2 sloppy roommates, Jamie and Kevin, who lived together and spent most of their time avoiding responsibility, drinking beer, and generally acting like children. Jamie's long-suffering girlfriend, Sarah, was constantly trying to get him to grow up. The show was meant to be a classic, lovable slobs comedy, but it never quite found an audience and was canceled after just 2 seasons. The reason it got made in the first place is that it was based on a monstrously huge hit from the UK. The British Men Behaving Badly was one of the most popular sitcoms of the 1990s over there. It starred Martin Clunes and Neil Morrissey as 2 immature roommates, Gary and Tony. The premise was identical to the American version. The show captured the lad culture of the time and was famous for its witty scripts and the perfect chemistry between its leads. It was a cultural touchstone in Britain. So why did the American version fail? Truth be told, the humor just didn't translate well. The British show had a certain charm and cleverness that the American remake replaced with broader, sillier jokes. The characters in the US version came across as more pathetic than lovable, and the chemistry just wasn't there. It ended up being a forgettable show that couldn't escape the shadow of its brilliant British parent, proving that sometimes an idea gets lost in translation. While Men Behaving Badly failed to connect, our next remake was a quiet success, a gentle show about a guy whose life falls apart, which found a small but loyal audience in America. 10. Dear John.
Before you hit the ground, you wake up.
God, yes.
Yeah.
And I have this all the time, where Julio Iglesias is giving you a bikini wax.
In the late 1980s, the American sitcom Dear John told the story of a high school teacher named John Lacey. The show starts right after John comes home to find a letter from his wife saying she's leaving him for his best friend. His whole life turned upside down, a lonely John joins a support group for single, divorced, and widowed people. The comedy came from the weekly meetings of this quirky group of misfits who all tried to help each other navigate the strange world of being single again. The show was warm, funny, and a modest hit for NBC, running for 4 seasons. This heartwarming American sitcom was actually a remake of a British show with the exact same name and premise. The UK's Dear John, created by the legendary writer John Sullivan, also followed a man named John, whose wife leaves him. He also joins a support group filled with eccentric characters. The British version was a bit more melancholy and had a drier sense of humor, as is common with British comedy. But the core idea of finding friendship and humor after heartbreak was the same. The American producers saw the potential in this relatable story. They cast Judd Hirsch, who was already a famous TV star from the show Taxi, in the lead role. They made the humor a bit brighter and more accessible for American audiences. While it never became a ratings giant like Cheers or Seinfeld, the American Dear John was a solid and well-liked sitcom. It's a show that many people have forgotten, along with its secret British origins. From a gentle hit to a legendary disaster, our next show tried to remake what some call the British Friends and failed so spectacularly that it became a famous Hollywood cautionary tale. 11. Coupling.
What are they for? I mean, look at them. Look at the chubby little bastards just sitting around everywhere. I mean, what are they? Pets for chairs?
Back in the early 2000s, there was a British sitcom called Coupling that was a massive sensation. It was about the adventures and conversations of 6 friends, 3 men and 3 women, as they navigated dating and relationships in London. The show was famous for its incredibly clever, fast-paced writing and its daring, often complicated episode structures. Because of the 6 friends setup, it was often called the British answer to Friends, but it was much edgier and more cleverly written. It was a masterpiece of sitcom writing. With all that success, it was only a matter of time before America tried to make its own version. In 2003, NBC launched The American Coupling. The producers were so confident that they promoted it as The Next Friends, which was ending its run at the time. They even used the exact same scripts from the British show, just with American actors and an American setting. They thought it was a can't-miss, foolproof plan to create the next big hit. They were wrong. The show was a complete and total disaster. The witty, fast-paced dialogue that sounded brilliant with British accents sounded strange and unnatural coming from American actors. The clever episode structures just felt confusing. The chemistry between the cast was non-existent. Critics hated it, and audiences were completely baffled. The show was canceled after only 4 episodes aired. It became a legendary flop, a perfect example of how you can't just copy and paste a great show from one culture to another and expect it to work. If you think remaking a beloved sitcom is hard, just wait until you see what happened when MTV tried to remake a cringe comedy about 4 awkward teenagers. The result was one of the most hated shows ever made. 12. The In-Betweeners.
Cats!
The In-Betweeners from the UK is a beloved cringe comedy classic. The show follows 4 nerdy and hopelessly awkward high school friends, Will, Simon, Jay, and Neil, as they desperately and unsuccessfully try to be cool, meet girls, and survive the nightmare of being a teenager. The humor is embarrassing, crude, and absolutely hilarious. The show was so popular in Britain that it led to 2 blockbuster movies. It perfectly captured the feeling of being a teenager who is not cool, not a jock, and not a total geek, but stuck somewhere horribly in between. In 2012, MTV decided that American teenagers needed their own version of the show. They created an American remake of The In-Betweeners, keeping the same character names and a lot of the same storylines. On paper, it seemed like a good idea. The struggles of being a teenager are universal, right? The producers hired a cast of young American actors and tried to recreate the magic of the original. The result was an absolute train wreck. The American version was despised by critics and, more importantly, by fans of the original British show. The jokes that were funny in the UK version felt forced and uncomfortable in the American one. The charm was gone, replaced by a sense of desperation. It was a pale imitation that missed the entire point of what made the original so special. The backlash was so intense that the show was quickly canceled, and it now stands as a monument to how difficult it is to remake a comedy that is so perfectly British. MTV's attempt at a remake was a disaster, but they weren't done. They next tried to adapt a controversial British teen drama, and the result was so shocking it caused a massive public outcry. 13. Skins.
Go on, guess. Guess. Hey, give up. Daisy Worthing. I don't know who she is either.
The original British version of Skins was a cultural phenomenon when it came out in 2007. The show was a raw and honest look at the lives of a group of teenagers in Bristol, England. It was groundbreaking because it was written by very young writers and dealt with serious, mature themes in a way that felt real to teens. The show was famous for its wild parties, its dramatic storylines, and for completely changing its cast every 2 years to keep the characters high school aged. It was a controversial but hugely influential series. Sensing another potential hit, MTV decided to create an American version of Skins in 2011. They promised to deliver the same honest and unflinching look at teen life for an American audience. They hired young, unknown actors and based the early episodes directly on the scripts from the UK version. The show's creators hoped to start a conversation and create the same kind of buzz the original had generated. They definitely created buzz, but not the kind they wanted. The American version was immediately slammed for its content. Parent groups were outraged, and advertisers started pulling their support from the show before it even aired many episodes. People felt the show was way too much for American television. The controversy completely overshadowed the stories and the actors. The show limped to the end of its first season with very low ratings and was not renewed. It was another case of a British show being too hot for American TV to handle. Remaking a modern show is risky, but it's even riskier to try and remake a show that's considered one of the greatest sitcoms ever made. Our next show is about the disastrous attempt to Americanize a classic about a horrible hotel owner. 14. Pain.
Drive safely.
Are the nice cards helpful?
Very. Thank you, dear.
In the world of British comedy, Fawlty Towers is considered perfect. The show, which only ever made 12 episodes, stars the brilliant John Cleese as Basil Fawlty, the rude, snobby, and constantly stressed-out owner of a small hotel. The show is a masterclass in farcical comedy, as Basil's attempts to impress his guests or hide his mistakes always spiral into hilarious, chaotic disasters. It is widely regarded as one of the best-written and funniest sitcoms in history. Because of this, trying to remake it is seen as almost impossible. But that didn't stop Hollywood from trying. Not once, but 3 times. The most famous attempt was a 1999 sitcom called Pain, which starred the legendary actor John Larroquette. The show was a direct scene-for-scene remake of Fawlty Towers. Larroquette played Royal Pain, the owner of a terrible hotel called the Whispering Pines. The wife was there, the Spanish waiter was there, and the plots were lifted directly from the original. The problem was that you can't just copy perfection and expect the same result. John Cleese's performance as Basil Fawlty was unique and impossible to replicate. The American version felt like a bad cover band trying to play a classic song. The timing was off, the energy wasn't there, and the whole thing felt soulless. The show was a massive failure with both critics and audiences. It was pulled from the air after only 8 episodes and serves as the ultimate warning that some comedy masterpieces should be left alone. Remaking a perfect show is a bad idea. But what about a show that was made, finished, and then hidden away from the public forever? Our next story is about a remake that was so disliked by the network it never even got a chance to air. 15. Us and Them.
Me too, I'm not hungry really. I should have a couple of omelets or something.
Cheese, mushroom, ham, tomato.
Yeah, cheers.
Over in the UK, a show called Gavin and Stacey is a national treasure. It's a sweet, funny, and heartwarming sitcom about a boy from Essex, England, and a girl from Barry, Wales, who fall in love after talking on the phone at work. The show is about their relationship, but also about their crazy and lovable families and friends coming together. It was created by and co-starred James Corden before he became a huge star in America. The show is pure comfort television, beloved by millions. In 2013, the Fox network decided to bring this charming story to America. They developed a remake called Us and Them, starring Jason Ritter and Alexis Bledel as the main couple. The show followed the same plot, with a boy from New York and a girl from Pennsylvania falling in love and trying to merge their very different families. The network had high hopes for it and ordered a full season of 13 episodes. The entire season was filmed and completed. And then something strange happened. The network just didn't air it. At first, they cut the episode order, then they announced it wouldn't be on the fall schedule, and finally, they confirmed that it would never be shown on television in the United States at all. No official reason was ever given, but the rumors were that the network executives simply didn't like the finished product and decided it was better to cut their losses and bury the show completely. It's a rare and bizarre case of a remake being so disliked by its own creators that the public never even got to see it.